Ali, 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 yeah. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7. I praise Allah for these lessons. I'm striving to be the message, and I thank Allah for His blessings. Ali was the circle 7.
Islam, Islam, Islam. Want to rise upon the 7th. Give all praises to the great God, Allah, our Father God, Allah. Honors to His holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, Al-Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. We give honors to our Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere. And therefore, honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. We give honors to our Grand National Seal. We give honors to our Grand National Emblem, National Flag, Divine Constitution and Bylaws, and honors to all of you who are indeed a living manifestation and personification of everything that our Holy Prophet brought to make us a nation. I want to welcome you to another grand measure brought forth from our Father's treasures, sponsored and brought to you by the Moorish American government. Grand draw we had to bring on the Manifest family. We're dealing with the late night library of archives and wisdom session. And we're dealing with self-mastery. You see, that which will make us better as a people when it comes to dealing with, building ourselves up mentally, physically, and spiritually. Your health is wealth, so you already know where we're coming from. And we are continuing in regards to dealing with the present book, God, Man, the Word Made Flesh. And a lot of our family is actually engaging and basically exercising this saving power when it comes to basically being able to go within the self and deal with self-mastery, discipline, when it comes to dealing with our appetites and our passions and so forth and so on. That's what these special drawings are all about. So we're giving it to our people from many different angles, so that our people will be able to utilize these things in their lives. So I want to give honors to everybody who's been up with us in these particular hours, who are able to sit here, and get these special lessons and blessings. We got a grand drawing tonight coming from our late night library archives and wisdom. And this one will be entitled The Altar in the Midst of Egypt. The Altar in the Midst of Egypt. And it's going to be a grand draw. And y'all already know we're dealing with physiology. And on the 12-step ladder, we ascend until we reach the pinnacle of that which life is spent to build, a temple of perfected man. We want to give honors to all of our family who have the will, to exercise their five and be able to think, and live. So without further ado and delay, we're going to pick up where we left off at. And we're going to share our screen real quick. I'm going to share the entire screen. That way I make sure, because I got a habit of not sharing what I'm supposed to be sharing at times. But praise be to Allah. All is well. Gonna have to get us some help in here after a while. Okay. Yeah, this is where we at right here. This is where we left off at last night. And we're dealing with Isaiah. Now there's a measure I always like to point out to our family, dealing with these special words, because whether we know it or not, when we get into the language, just looking at the name Isaiah, in and of itself, this is a powerful demonstration here. And it says Isaiah means the salvation of Jehovah. So you'll wonder, well, what name in Isaiah is attaching itself to the word Jehovah? You see, Isaiah, it's actually the Aya part. This part here, the I, A, and the H. We already know we done history on this. I took our family into these areas many times when it goes to tracing the word Yah, or Jah, and how these things are connected. Actually, Aya, or Aya, we already know this is actually the name that goes even back to Allah, in ancient Kemet, Aya. So Isaiah, as we have it, means salvation, of Yahweh. Yahweh. They translate it as Jehovah because ain't no J in the original language. We already know that. But in this special measure, there's a grand drawing that matters because we're dealing with physiology. And actually quoting Isaiah and the Piscean records, or what a lot of people like to call the Bible, a basic instruction before leaving earth, it states, and in the day, or that day, shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. Now y'all hear me quoting this all the time, quoting Isaiah chapter 19. So y'all gonna love this one right here when we go into this one from a physiological standpoint. Let me check my audience and drop the link in here too, just in case our family may want to get in here. I'm gonna try to be back and forth. Let me see here. Okay. So let me drop the link in here, family. I got to figure out how to pin that link up there to the top too, because I know it's a way that I can actually pin it. But all is well. Nevertheless, the link is there for those who would like to come in. So yes, tonight in our session, we're dealing with, again, Isaiah. Again, and in the day, or that day, right, shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. Now we know, really, this deals with what we call the Great Pyramid in most cases, of Giza. And it also has to do with that pillar at the border, in a deeper aspect, dealing with the obelisk, the obelisk, so all of these are found along the banks of the Nile, So it says Isaiah in Hebrew means salvation of Jehovah. It says, and Jehovah means the whole body of man. You know why? That it actually means the whole body of man, because we know that the name itself is made up of the body of man. In fact, let me go here, because there ain't nothing wrong with pulling this up and showing it to our family. Because as we always do, we always like to make it plain to our family. Since we got it open, we didn't really intend to go all the way into this, but it ain't strange. So want to make sure that our family is able to follow us. So let me pull this here a little bit so y'all can see this. This is a good expression right here. You see? You see the shape and the form of the word. You know that is Yahweh, which is often translated as Jehovah. You know, and it's in the shape or the form of the man. Y'all already seen these charts, so we ain't got to go into them. You know, we'll just click on them as we move through here. You see? Well, you can see the express form of man again, as we show you all the time, as a representation of the word. Remember, we're dealing with God, man, the word made flesh anyway. You see? And so we can see this is special drawing. You know, it's very powerful. All of this has to do with man himself being a living expression, a living manifestation of the Creator. You see? So yeah. Now that we understand again, when we say Isaiah, Hebrew is the salvation of Yahweh or Jehovah, and Jehovah means the whole body of man. That means that your salvation comes through you. Your salvation is inside of you. You know, one of the measures that we have when we express our symbol, you know, you can actually see it here too. I'm going to share this right here since we there. Let's see. We'll click on it right here, go into our website so that you can see it. Just wait till the emblems and the ensigns spin in, they rotate in. If you notice here, there's your salvation, right? We demonstrate salvation, our God union. One nation under God, you know, that's us, you know. So the salvation in the form of man becomes the star. The crescent represents the 9-month process in the womb, so to speak, right? Salvation, it comes through us. It don't come in no spooky way. You know, it comes through us. You know, anything that has to do with our upliftment and us being saved come through us. We got to remember that. So it says Yahweh means the whole body of man. But more especially does it mean the second man. It says Adam, a quickening spirit, the Lord God from heaven, the I am, the Lord thy God. You see? So this is talking about spirit man. You see? So it says the geography of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt resembles the anatomy of man's body. So, we talking about an Upper Egypt and a Lower Egypt inside of us. So there must be an altar in the midst of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt as well then, right? But it says the solar plexus is the dividing line between the lower or the animal, which is Latin for bad life. It says, or Adam or earthly man, and the spiritual ego, residing in the heart-shaped cerebellum. And we know that this is, you know, seated, you know, positioned in the brain, so to speak, right? So we have one special head that has to do with being controlled by the lower or the solar plexus, our passions and our desires and our appetites. And then one that is actually in the thinking apparatus. So it says, as man thinketh in his heart, and the heart is consciousness, ain't got nothing to do with no blood pumping organ. You know, in fact, you know, when we look at this word heart, it's very powerful because we know if we take the H off the front and put it on the end, we get the word earth. You see? In the Grand Quran, when it said Allah was going to place a ruler in the earth, a caliph in the earth, Ah, that's powerful. Say, where's the nearest place we can meet the great God Allah? In the heart. You see? But you can also see if you drop the H and you drop the T, then you get what? Ear. You see, if you drop the T and you leave the H, you get here. You see? Oh, we can go all over with this demonstration right here. So when we hear, we should hear with the consciousness of our divinity, the consciousness of our spirituality, as opposed to, the carnal ear. Carnal ear calls us to be emotion, and it's more attached to that solar plexus, to that desire, them passions. When you get to dealing with the higher consciousness, though, that spiritual ego in man is more exalted, than the carnal ego. So it says the ego thinks where it resides. So it says the salvation of the ego is in the midst of Egypt, etc. So it would have to be in the midst of Egypt, and the altar would be here. And we showed you last night that the pyramid, is a representation of the chamber of the adept, and this is above your neck. This is the true temple. It's not strange that you have those 2 points, and in the mid of the point, where you have your thalamus, you have on the outer expression what we call the temple, right? The temple. So it says the salvation of the ego is in the midst of Egypt, etc. Let me check and see if we got any of our family trying to go. Okay, no, we ain't got nobody trying to get in there. We're going to keep teaching. All is well. Want to give honors to all of those who have been showing up throughout the week. But it says the geography, again, of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt resembles the anatomy of man's body. And we just demonstrated that solar plexus is the divine line between the lower animal, or Latin for bad life, or Adam earthly man, and the spiritual ego reside in the heart-shaped cerebellum. Make you think about, that heart-shaped herb, in the movie Black Panther, huh? But anyway, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The ego thinks where it resides. The salvation of the ego is in the midst of Egypt. It says, in the archives of ancient Egypt, it ain't strange, we talking about the late night library, archives and wisdom. In the archives of ancient Egypt, 2 crowns have been found. One white, representing Upper Egypt, and the other red, representing Lower Egypt. We talked about this recently, right? This is also synonymous to the same reason we talk about the white Fez degree and the red Fez degree, right? It says comment is unnecessary. In other words, we should already know this. The crowns of Lower and Upper Egypt, and then there's a crown that deals with the uniting, where you bring the 2 crowns together. You see? The Atef, the Deshret. You see? These are some powerful demonstrations here, right? But it says the Great Pyramid is situated exactly on the geographical center between Upper and Lower Egypt. Thus, it is in the midst of Egypt as a whole, and on the borders thereof of both sections. The Pyramid of Cheops is an encyclopedia of physical science and astral lore. You often hear me referring to Medu Netta being a part of our being. There is what we call a library of archives within us. The sacred writings and the formula to the sacred writings exists within us. Y'all already heard me talk about that earlier, right? It says the science of numbers, weights, measures, astronomy, astrology, and the secret mysteries of physiology are symboled in that incomparable monument. The history of Freemasonry is recorded there. You see? So they don't tell you this. They be hiding this stuff right here. You see? Note on the chart of descent of the spinal cord and the pneumogastric nerve, 2 wonderful cords are the nerves, the Addi, or the Ida, and the Pingala, These are those cords that we talk about going around the spinal cord again. They're mentioning one passing the blood, one passing the oxygen. You see, it says in their relation to Noon in Bethlehem. And you will find by the study of books on them, it says that the passageways correspond to the inner man and typifies the mysterious Hiram Abiff, whose death the word was lost and finally restored by his resurrection. See, they done stole all this information from, the teachings of Kemet, because we know Hiram Abiff is a corruption of Heru Ami Abu, the dweller of hearts. You remember we just talking about the heart a few minutes ago. Ain't got nothing to do with the blood pumping organ. Now we tell you in our teaching that we already know, the perfect word in all actuality is the logos. You see, the perfect number is 7. You see, we just took you through the 7 degrees of self-mastery last night. The nearest place you can meet the great God is in your consciousness, within your heart, not the blood pumping organ above the neck, as we said, right? So it says, Hiram Abiff, by whose death the word was lost and finally restored by his resurrection. So in other words, we call it the exhuming of the God-man, exhuming of a nation. You see? I want to give honors to my Grand National Chairman, Dr. Akin Acton Pert M. Heru, Tutankhamun Bey, for exposing, the code name as a representation of the God-man. So this death has been covered up, in this esoteric philosophy under the name Hiram Abiff, but it's the death of the African God-man. You see, so the word or the logos became lost, but it was only restored when the resurrection becomes a fact. That's what we're talking about. It states the pyramid, the altar in the midst of Egypt, was reared by people who lived in some form of day of judgment, some past Aquarian age, and who possessed wisdom that enabled them to solve the mystery of Christ hid in God. The seed is the word of God. You see, so that same seed that we've been talking about, preserving within the self, demonstrating abstinence, the Christos or Charast, as they will call it in the Kemetic text, that allows the oil to saturate, the different organs of the body, the cells and everything else is what caused this resurrection to take place. So it says from the Great Pyramid of Giza, right, by Lewis P. McCarthy. The author believes that no man can study the Bible a great while carefully and dispassionately, noting its place in the world, its surroundings, its handings down, its prophetical bearings, not considered in detail, but in their large comprehensive scope, without coming to the conviction that a divine power and providence doeth in some way hedge it about, without coming to the conviction that this divine power is conscious entity, just as we are, that he is, by his superiority, wisdom, and power continually, everywhere, intelligently present as the immediate cause of such each sequence in all the universe, however minute. So we already know that this power pervades the universe. That same power is a power that exerts itself for the individual at the will of the use too. So we've been talking about the optic thalamus, is going deeper now into the optic thalamus. It states the lamp or the eye. You already know when the eye is full of light, then the body is full of light. You see? The lamp or eye, the thalamus, within, which is the optic or the eye, is the great ganglion of the inner brain. It is called the bed or chamber. It projects backward in the midbrain. Laterally, it rests against the superior lamina in the internal capsule, which separates it from the lentiform nucleus. Remember, you got to have your Gray's Anatomy now. You can look these terms up and you get better into the inside of this right here. It goes deep, but it says shaped like an egg, and I done showed y'all the ophthalmos many times in the center of the brain, so y'all know what I'm talking about. With a small, it said with the small end directed forward. It measures 4 centimeters, or about 1.5 inches in length, and 2.5 centimeters, or 1 inch width and thickness. It has an anterior and posterior extremity and 4 surfaces. Santi, it says the posterior surface or dorsal of the midbrain, though free, is entirely concealed by the cerebella and the cerebral hemispheres. And it says it forms a part of the floor of the transverse fissure of the cerebrum and is covered by pia matter. The lateral sulcus bounds it on each side. From the sulcus laterals, it elevates abruptly toward the median line, where it presents the longitudinal groove. This produces 2 ridges, which are subdivided by a transverse groove in 4 eminences. It says, see the article on the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. And we actually went through that, earlier. But it says the cochleae of the corporeal quadrimina, it says on either side are anterior, and the little lateral quadriminal bodies is the medial geniculate joined to the inferior quadriminal collicus. It says by the oblique ridge called the brachium inferius. Now these are doctors, family, that are giving you this terminology. We doctors of divinity too. But it says the nearly parallel longitudinal ridges below the corporal quadrimina, it says, are formed by the brachia conjugata. It says in the cerebellum. It says in the bottom of the grove between them are formed by the superior medullary venom of what they call the Vusians. It says when the tranquillar nerve or the fourth is seen issuing, then you have midbrain, again corpora quadrimina, brachia, the peduncle, the tegumenta, the substantia of the nigra, or the basis peduncle. All of these different words in the Latin that they use. So let's look up, the aspect of the midbrain so that we can see exactly what's being referred to here. Because we got to know the self, right? Let me show you images of it. All right. And this is actually a good chart right here because it's showing you. So this is your midbrain here, right? See your pituitary gland, your hypothalamus, your cerebrum, the ventricles, your thalamus, all of that. This is your cerebellum here. Your medulla, your brain stem. So when you hear these terminologies, all this is dealing with what is inside of you. We don't know this stuff because we ain't studied it. This is the terminology they use when speaking on it too. So you have the corporeal quadrimina and the brachia, right? So let's pull this up. It may let me just copy it like this right here and then go in there. Yeah, let's see if it do. Like I said, you need Gray's anatomy in order to understand this, because all this is doing is letting you know how your body works. Letting you know how the brain function. And if you think it's crazy to try to learn how your body function, then something is wrong with you. So here it tells you exactly, what the corporeal quadrimina is, right? I spread that out too much. It says the corporeal quadrimina. It's going all over the place right here. It states is a part of the midbrain and controls the position of the head, eyes, in response to visual, auditory, and somatic stimuli. It is also the reflex center that connects the midbrain and the hindbrain. The quadrigeminal plate, it says, on the posterior surface of the midbrain houses the four colliculi, and it states a colliculi. It says 2 inferior and 2 superior that control the auditory and visual reflexes. So this is where, your hearing and again your eyes and all of that right there come as far as dealing with the vibration is controlled by this particular measure. You can see it from this angle here. Let's see. There you go. Kind of make me think about the 4 quadrants right here. And I mentioned this too before. Trying to blow it up. It ain't letting me blow it up. Okay, there we go. Now you got to let me pull you down though. You see, and so you can see it right here. They're showing you the superior colliculus and the inferior. You can see the lines pointing to them here, the inferior, the superior up here. So this is your 4, and it breaks down which represents which, in order for these things to work properly. Well, we already know we got to replenish the body with necessary nutrients. If not, sometimes we can have brain fog and everything else. As a result, we can have also toxic chemicals that release in the brain, and really begin to do damage, so to speak. And this is what really caused, them issues when it comes to dealing with not only our central nervous system, but, ones may go into seizure, stroke, all types of different demonstration when you ain't dealing with the aspects of the health. So it's good to know who you is and know yourself and know how to really heal the self. Because if you don't know what it takes to feed these special portions in the body proper nutrients, you may overstimulate them with certain things that you shouldn't add too much of. Because this is a science. There has to be a meiotic balance, a perfect balance when it comes to dealing with the body. So we give honors to this particular work, God, man, the Word made flesh, that allows us to begin to look into, ourselves. Let's look up the brachia, right, and see what it is. Let's see what that is. We shouldn't be afraid or shy to learn about these things, because this is, where you can actually understand that your health is your wealth. And the more you know about yourself, the better off you are. This is the brachial plexus. Let's look at the images first. And we got it here. They show actually, coming from here. You see the nerves that's running from here, the plexio brachial. A lot of time this has to do with what you feel when they say that you have pains before you get ready to have some type of heart attack or something. This is dealing with the nerves in these particular areas. Notice how they branch out from the central nervous system. So we have to pay attention when we get these signs in these nerves, that begin to aggravate. Sometimes we might think we done pulled a muscle or whatever the case may be, but it can actually be a little worse than that right there. So that you don't want to overlook that. You got to know yourself. But let us go deeper into this special measure. Because in most cases, if it's something harmful in relation to dealing with the body, if one portion is out of whack, all of it is out of whack. Now, you may not find nothing to be wrong at that particular time, but you may find out later, that, and sometimes it can be too late, when you deal with this special measure. Again, this, this is nerves in all actuality. I know y'all know about nerves and nerve damage, where nerves are not able to properly carry out their functions. You got arthritis and everything that's setting in, and calcification of the arteries. Where the arteries become like bones because too much calcium has built up. So these are the branches of the body, in the upper extremity coming down. They have to work together holistically. You see? I'm just giving you these things here. See, it's talking about the giving rise to the motor and sensory nerves. When you get to dealing with these nerves, it's almost like a real tree, family. If you look at the body, the nerves coming off the body is like a real tree. Branches on the tree is what I'm referring to. Let me see if we got somebody that's here. Islam, brother Noble Brian, we give honors to you, grand man. Yes, sir. So yeah, it's important that we know these things. We talking about Lower and Upper Egypt too, ain't we? So let me go back over here and get back to our document. So it goes into what they call, again, the peduncle, as well. Let's look this one up. Let's see. We should be able to get that one in there too. Like I say, if you get Gray's Anatomy, you're going to be able to find these things in great detail. I was able to buy me a Gray's Anatomy for like $10 from Barnes & Noble. This is dealing with the cerebellar peduncle, just like they described it. And this right here is also a part and partial, of connection to that central nervous system. The cerebellar peduncle connect to the cerebellum, to the brain stem. There are 6 cerebellar peduncles in total, 3 on each side. The superior cerebellar peduncle is paired structure of white matter. That's the pure matter that they was talking about, connecting to the cerebellum to the midbrain. So this is all dealing with the connection of everything that is speaking of. All this is doing is letting you know, what is here in the body. See the pineal gland, the truncular nerve, cerebellar peduncular, the superior and inferior. We just talked about them on both sides. The choroid plexus, as they call it, the pons. That's actually what a pyramid actually exists too, inside, of the head. There's actually a place that is called the pyramid when you deal with the medulla and all of that as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So this is dealing with some detail, family, and these things that we have to go and study, even deeper. We just giving keys right now. Learn how these things function and how they work, and you can demonstrate and function at maximum efficiency, so to speak. You can gain control over yourself, so to speak, once you know yourself. So this is just showing us at how much we actually know of the self. Think about it. We know everything about everything outside of the self, but we have no knowledge of how we function. This is enough to let you see, how intricate as a design and fearlessly and marvelously that we were made, family. Yeah, sometimes they call it the trigeminal. It says the tegmentum, as they call it, Latin for covering, a general area within the brain stem, and the tegmentum is the vertebral part of the midbrain, and the tectum is the dorsal part of the midbrain. Is located between the ventricular system, distinctive basal or ventricular structures at each level. It forms the floor of the midbrain, and you can go further into this. I want to go back to the other that I was dealing with. They're going to take me way into it, but I wanted to touch this one here in embryos. The tegmentum is the anterior half in the neural tube. However, for the fetuses, to adults, the tegmentum refers only to the parts of the brain that remain relatively unchanged after development is complete. So, man, just learning about the development. Look at how much of a universe we are, family. Look at this. This is a powerful demonstration here. You see? This is explaining everything that we just read to you. The tegmentum area includes various different structures such as the rostral end of the reticular formation, several nuclei controlling eye movements, the periaductal gray matter, the red nucleus, substantia nigra, it says in the ventricle trigeminal area. All of this is dealing with the central nervous system and the function, motor functions, being able to see, hear, man, all of this is important. So you can do a little bit more deep dive in the research of it. We just want to point these things out that are mentioned here. Okay. So we go further. We already seen this definition, and this one is mentioned too. So we don't even have to go into those. So now that you see what's being referred to here, and you understand the concept of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. We went into that in our last video, so you can go back and check that out as well. And the one we demonstrated last night, it says the four colloquially, it says of the corporea quadrigemina, it states, and the four brachia connected them with the geniculate bodies constitute the quadrigeminal lamina, which forms the greater part of the posterior surface of the midbrain, is also called the tectum, which we went into some of that as well. This lamina rests upon the dorsum of the peduncle cerebri, and the lamina quadrimina, it states, represents a small median triangle between the superior colliculi. It says, and the habinula called the subpineal triangle, in which the pineal body rests. They're talking about the pineal gland. The lamina is invested with pia matter. We went into that. It says all of the above is taken from Santi's Anatomy of the Brain and the Spinal Cord. It says he is an authority on this subject. That's something we need to get to, Santi's version as well. The ancients from time immemorial, it says, have considered the pine tree as the most of sacred of all trees. The pineal gland, or the corpus pineale, is shaped like a pine cone. The pine cone, right? And the ancient physiologists who gave it its name must have assuredly have understood its great esoteric function. It is 6 millimeters, and 0.25 inches high, and 4 millimeters and 0.17 inches in diameter, joined to the roof of the third ventricle by a flattened stalk and hapnulia. The hapnulia, right? It is also called the epiphysis and the coronium, It states it is small, reddish, and the size of a pea. Its anterior is made up of closed follicles surrounded by ingrowths of connected tissues, and the follicles are filled with epithelial cells mixed with calcareous lime matter. The brain sand, or alcervulus cerebri. It states calcareous deposits are found also in the pineal stalk along the choroid plexus. They referring to Santi again. It says this organ is Mars and Uranus in astronomical correspondence. Let us examine for a moment the wonderful term pia matter. What marvelous light floods the mind of the esoteric student when once the real meaning of this term becomes clear. Pia matter is Latin for tender mother. That's what pia matter means. It's Latin for tender mother. It is the inner and most vascular, full of vessels of the three membranes of the brain and the spinal cord. The spinal fluid comes from the pia matter of the cerebrum. And this fluid, Santi tells us, is more like tears and sweat than serum. These fluids are both saline, and alkaline, there being a larger percent of sodium chloride therein. So if you understand, what we have when we deal with balance in the body, it comes through these fluids, basically. You see, sodium chloride. But it says wonderful, pure matter, and that's balancing the electrolytes in the body, right? It says the wonderful pure matter, a tender mother, is the mother substance, the pure water of Virgin Mary, immaculate mother of all things. Most truly was Mary, the mother of God, as spiritual as well as physiological and chemical truth. The pituitary body is given this name because it secretes a mucus phlegm. It is a small reddish ellipsoid organ in depression of the sphenoid bone or sphenoid bone attached to the brain by the peduncle. It said it contains the viscid jelly-like material or pituita, right? Which suggested the name, right? It is also called the hypophysis, right? It consists of two lobes bound together by connective tissue. We showed you pictures of these things already. You can go back and do the research. And in structure, resembles the thyroid gland. The anterior lobe is hollowed out, it says, on its posterior surface, which is kidney shaped, and receives the posterior lobe and what is called the infundibulum into the cavity. The infundibulum is a funnel-shaped passage, a canal from this body, the pituitary, to the third ventricle. This body secretes a fluid that seems to stimulate the growth of connective tissues and to be essential to sex development, so to speak. In other words, they letting you know what caused the expression of dopamine, and the feeling that people get from these types of sensations, so to speak. It says this organ has Mars-Neptune correspondence. The pineal gland is the male spiritual organ, the electric body, otherwise called Joseph in the Bible terminology, the father of Jesus, the male element in the seed and the source of the seed. To it also the seed or Jesus or son returns after his work is done. Joseph of Arimathea receives the body of Jesus and lays it in his own rock-hewn tomb, where no man was ever laid before. The pineal gland becomes hard like a rock when the brain sand, the saved seed, is furnished it. When no material is being returned in tithes, that 10% going to the brain, the tithes, paying tithes, right? The pineal body is flabby and pasty. Let us examine for a moment those organs above the optic thalamus. In the article on Santa Claus that we read, week or two ago, it says the island of Rio and Claustrum have been described. It is interesting, to note that there are 5 different bodies laying in the perpendicular line directly beneath the suture, as follows. The first, the island of Rio and the claustrum external capsule and the lentiform or nucleus, and the internal capsule directly beneath the latter is the thalamus. So if we go back to the brain, just to go back to this measure here and give our family some background. And you can look at these things that are being described, is basically described in this portion. Everything that's dealing with, y'all already seen it. We showed it to the family. It's showing you all of these things. This is what it's talking about. So let me go here and go back to where we were. Continue the reading. So it says the lentiform nucleus. It says the internal capsule is a funnel-like group of nerve fibers which enter the cerebrum and are reinforced by a great number of additional fibers from the thalamus, which converge upward. The bell of this funnel opens upward and contains the lentiform nucleus. The lentiform nucleus occupies the cone-like cavity of the internal capsule by whose laminae it is separated from the ventricle. It resembles a biconvex lens. It says with a somewhat thickened anterior border. It says when viewed in a horizontal section, it is triangular in shape. The hypotenuse and the base are formed, respectively, by the superior and inferior laminae. It says of the internal capsule. The external capsule forms the perpendicular and separates the lentiform nucleus from the claustrum. And they quoting Santee again. Book of Anatomy. It says we can easily see from the above description of the organs that they are correlated and form the path from the thalamus to the door of Brahma. It is through this channel, right, attenuated, the ethereal substance from without is conveyed to the inner eye. The rays or vibrations which converge along its pathway are by means of the lentiform nucleus and the biconvex lens in the cerebrum focalized in the all-seeing eye. Wonder of all wonders is the head of man, within which the Adam man or the God man dwells, Taurus and Aries, the house and the temple. It says if man cannot rule his own house, how can he take care of the church or the temple of God? That's the same thing. If man don't know how to govern himself, how he gonna govern somebody else? You see, we got to get out of the sense government and deal with some true self-government. So we govern the self, we learn to govern, everybody and everything else outside of the self by learning to govern that self. But anyway, it goes on and it speaks on the central eye, still dealing with that thalamus. It says the lamp, and the lamp thereof is the Lamb, right? Book of Revelations. The optic thalamus in the central eye in the center of the head is called both lamp and lamb. The thalamus, a chamber, is a mass of gray matter at the base of cerebrum projecting into and bounding the third ventricle. The Hebrew letters Lam, Aleph, and Mem, and Beth means, right, in their order, overcoming, father, mother, and house, some materialized form. It says while P in lamp gives a different meaning, P is from the 17th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Pe means speech, or that which radiates or goes forth. In the Torah, it is referred to as the force which dispenses the essence of life and which gives it the means of what perpetually renewing its creations after destruction. This is a cycle. It says one may speak destructively and then having seen the light is able to speak constructively. You see? It says, thus we see how it also means rays of light, etc., etc., hence lamp. The essence of life within us, the oil, is what feeds this lamp or causes it to give light. If it is carried up to the place where this lamp or candle, which the Bible refers to, is which the optic within the thalamus referred to above. If thine eye be single, free from defect, dictionary, the whole body will be full of light. The outer eye see only by reflection. The vibrations from the inner eye, the optic, is conveyed along the optic nerves and produce spectacular on the ether. Thus, we frequently, when trying to comprehend something, put our hand over our eyes for a moment and then exclaim, oh yes, now I see. Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world. This is the lamp, that optic thalamus, family. You see? So it says the seed is also referred to as the lamb, as it is necessary for the seed of Jesus to be carried up into this part of the anatomy in order that it may cause the optic to vibrate rapidly, thus produce the illumination. We shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye. Exodus 5:26, 15:26, pardon self. It says, if thou would diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and it's talking about that which is on high, in that heaved up place that we call heaven above the neck, and would do that which is right in his sight, save that seed, brothers. Demonstrate some abstinence. Don't be greedy. Give to the needy. Because we definitely need to save that seed. Anyway, it says that the Lord thy God will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes. I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. You see, and this is really diseases or illnesses that come upon the different portions of the body. So remember, we talking about lower and upper Egypt, right? So we have to set an altar in the midst of the land of Egypt. We have to illuminate that special altar with light, just like the Great Pyramid, right? Illuminated by the night and the stars, that shine through the different pads that actually cause a light to come into the pyramid. But anyway, it says, Psalms 25:1, unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. Then it says 25:13, his soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. Oh man, we thought that was just talking about the seed that's physically born from us, huh? No, it's talking about that seed that you save within the body. Psalms 37:1-5, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass, and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good, and shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. All this has to do with instruction to us when it comes to dealing with preservation, and abstinence. It says, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord, and trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. And the steps of a good man are ordained by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he should not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth them with his hand. And depart from evil, and do good, and dwell forevermore. It says, mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace. Psalm 62:1-2, truly my soul waiteth upon God, for him cometh my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I should not be greatly moved. And it goes on, with the Psalms 91. Y'all already know that one right there. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. He should cover thee with his feathers, under his wings shall thy trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, and not for the destruction that wasteth by noonday. All this is dealing with actually physiological aspects as well that deal with healing the body. And they go on and on and on and on, with these special measures that's quoted, from the book. So what we're going to do, we'll stop right here, and we understand exactly what's being said. If we go through these last portions, who satisfy my mouth with good things, so thy yoke is renewed like the eagles. The mouth is above the neck. This is where, God is speaking from, on the heights in the physiological sense of things, right? Psalm 119, 105, Nun, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Nun represent fish. Then they say the fish represent the Piscean era, or the Pisces, or whatever the case may be. So all of these things have an effect on our development, meaning the celestial realms or the heavens, you know, all of that energy that come from on high, you know, replenishes us. The more that we build in this temple of perfection down here, abstaining, you know, from certain activity, whether it be mentally or physically in our eating, again, indulging in all of those things, you know, all of this deals with leading to enlightenment or bringing about enlightenment in that lamp that we talking about. So it says Psalm 127, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. You see, that's a powerful demonstration right there. We already know we here to build a temple of perfected man, right? And it says, of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. You know, what is the fruit of the body? It's the purification of the seed. It's the saving, you know, of the seed. It's the raising up, you know, of that special Christ or that oil. But it says, Luke 12:31, but rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things should be added unto you. The kingdom, you know, of the creator of the kingdom of the body is in the head, the Godhead. You see? In the Father's house is many mansions. And those many mansions have to do with cells, you know, arteries, organs, etc. If it wouldn't, he wouldn't have told you so. You see, so you got to look at it from that aspect when you're dealing with it. So we're talking about as it is above, so it is below. As it is within, so it is without. What do we mean as it is above? Well, we already know we're dealing with the heavens and astrologics, right? You know, so it is below. So we're saying that everything that's on the manifest corresponds to everything that's there. As it is within. You know, there's something that corresponds with that which is within and that which is corresponding with that which is without. So, for example, symbolically, you know, we can go across the board and say, well, there's an Egypt in the heavens, if we comprehend this knowledge, as well as there being an Egypt on the plane of things made manifest. But there's also an Egypt within you. You see what I'm saying? As well as an Egypt outside of you. So there's a lower Egypt in you and an upper Egypt within you. There's a lower Egypt, you know, in the celestial realm and an upper Egypt in the celestial realm. There's a lower Egypt on this physical plane and an upper Egypt on this physical plane. You see? So this is basically a breakdown where we deal with things from the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. And this is where we're dealing with harmony with everything in creation. You are the universe. Remember, you're the microcosm of the macrocosm. Once you're able to bring these things into harmony, you can bring these things into the realm of being able to heal or bring them into healing. You see? Did you know that we, right here in our Moorish Holy Quran, you know, the rate of everything fell in creation when we fell in our ethers? When man fell, everything in creation fell too. They reached the rate of the atmosphere when he reached the rate of the atmosphere. Meaning when we fell into the plane of survival of the best. So everything that we see that's coming at us now, you know, the way you have intense storms tearing everything up, this is because this is what man is in his vibration. The more in harmony we are with ourselves, and if we like this as a collective, the more the creation itself harmonizes with us or is in harmony. You see? This is simple insight. We know this just by speaking to a plant. We know if we speak, you know, hatred to that plant gonna die. But if we speak love into that plant gonna live. So we have the power to be either speak life into existence or death. And it's the same thing when it comes to dealing with our body. We can speak life into our body, into our cells, into our brain, into our heart, into our organs, and everything else, or we can speak death upon us. That power of that tongue, family. You see? So we have to set the altar in the midst of Egypt. You see? We have to become governors of both lower and upper Egypt. And then we become the true hierophant of the self when it comes to dealing with self-mastery. You know, so yeah, I ain't gonna hold our family no more. But we got to keep this stuff coming. We got to keep it coming to the people and keep elevating them. Some of our people ain't gonna get this here because it's too much for some of them, but this is for those, who are at this particular level. So we teaching, if you notice, we've been teaching about 2 to 3 times in a day. So everybody gonna get something, and if you don't get it now, that don't mean, that it ain't meant to be understood. It's just not meant for you to get it now. You see? Yes, sir. Yeah, most definitely. Didn't I tell you, bro? That Grey's Anatomy book is off the chain. But then you quote this aspect from the biblical. By having that knowledge, you can also see it from a higher expression. And a lot of time when you hear people get up there and they go to talking and they go to talk about the light of the body and they be preaching esoterically, some of them guys be knowing what ones is talking about. While everybody else thinking he talking about a biblical passage, these people in there talking about, the body and the functions of the body. And they preaching this sermon and everybody in there pretty much sitting in there, laughing to themselves because they feel like they know more than the other people that's listening. Everybody else just looking at it as a story being told and regurgitation of some biblical history. But they know from a higher step, an expression of it, that this is all dealing with physiology, on the esoteric plane. So, we giving y'all some keys and some jewels, family, because this teaching is actually taught universally throughout all of the schools of sacred knowledge. They all teach on this level. We can show it to you in the Quran, the Bible, and the teachings of Kemet. All you have to do is know the basic foundation. Just by you knowing this teaching, you often know it says, well, it speaks of, I'm going to give you a prime example. I'm finna show you something right now. I'm going to show you something that's finna blow your mind. Let's use this as an example. We're going to go into Prophet Muhammad's journey to the heaven. We're going to go all the way to the 7th heaven, though. In his mirage. Let me see. This right here may give me the mirage. Yeah, I want to just get the whole story, of the mirage. That way I can go straight there. I'm going to show you how this thing is universal, family. This teaching that we talking about. And it actually tell you, what he tell you what he's seen, a prophet at each level. But I want to go to the highest place and show you what Muhammad seen in the heights of heaven. I want to see if it'll give me. And talking about his first stop. You see how they got it up here? I don't think they giving me the whole of the story here. They touching on some of it. I want them to take you to the highest aspect of it. You know what? Better yet, let's see what we do here. Let's see. Sidrata Muntaha. This is where Muhammad was said to be taken in the 7th heaven right here, family. I want to just take you straight there, but you can go and look at the journey that Prophet Muhammad had. And they call it the Sidra or the Lot tree or the utmost boundary. That would represent the crown chakra. But what it is said when he went up here, this particular area, Sidrata Muntaha, they said that this is the Lot tree. The lotus, it says a Lot tree of the furthest boundary. And there's a large Lot tree or Sidra tree that marks the utmost boundary of 7th heaven, right? Where none can pass. It is called Sidrata Muntaha because of the knowledge of the angels stop at that point. And no one is going beyond it. During the Isra and the Mirage of Muhammad, he traveled with the angel Jibril. It says to the tree where Gabriel stopped. And behind that tree, Allah instructed Muhammad about 5 daily prayers. But it goes into the teachings of Sidrata Muntaha, and it tell you, and this is quoting Surah 53, the prophet's heart did not doubt what he saw. How can you pagans then dispute with him regarding what he saw? And he certainly saw the angel descend a second time in a low tree of the most extreme limit in the seventh heaven, near which is the garden of eternal residence, while the low tree was overwhelmed with heavenly splendors. The prophet's sight never wandered, nor did it overreach. He certainly saw some of his Lord's greatest signs. And a lot of people don't know, when it's speaking of what it was that he seen, it says there was a sign for the people of Shabar to their dwelling place of 2 gardens, one on the right and one on the left. Eat from what your Lord has provided for you. Give him thanks, for your land is good and Lord most forgiving. And it says, but they paid no heed, so we loosed on them a flood from the dam and replaced their 2 gardens with others yielding bitter fruit and tamarisk bushes. See, this would be like one again misusing that special life force, and then that bitter expression being brought forth instead of that thing that will replenish the body. You see? And then it goes on, it says, in this way we punish them for their ingratitude. It says, will we punish anyone but the ungrateful? So one that is ungrateful, and it talks about even flowing water. It talks about the land of milk and honey. So when Jibril took him up there, it basically goes into detail. If you read it, it say that he was shown, the land of ancient Kemet. He was shown, what they would call the Garden of Eden that's within oneself. You see what I'm saying? So you got to go into it. It's deep, it's real deep, family. So that's actually in the Hadith when it talk about the night journey. And notice at each level of that night journey in Muhammad's Isra, in his Miraj, this Miraj and Isra that he went through, family, he's seen a prophet at each level. You see? At each level, he's seen a prophet. So you got to go and read it and study it. And it'll tell you at each level he's seen a prophet. Now notice it's 7 different levels that he went through. And this is why we say he was initiated, by the angel Jibril, who we call the Kemetic Adept, master, because Jibril came as a man. He was white clad. He was in all white when he came to Muhammad, and he was able to ascend that ladder. You see, the symbolic ascension of ascending the ladder, into the 7 heaven. These are 7 adept degrees. Same thing. See, the Sufis talk about it here too. It's talking about the cherubim and seraphim. Remember how we talk about the cherubim and seraphim being up in the heights of the heaven? So this thing is universal, family. When we go into this special teaching, all you got to do is look it up, and it tell you, he's seen all these prophets at every level. He's seen Isa, in the highest, and then he's seen Sidrata Muntaha. He was showed, the land of milk and honey, and that milk and honey is synonymous with what comes forth from on high and comes down the spine, right? In this case, in Mecca, the most sacred deals with the well of Zemzem. See it where it says Jibril brought me a vessel of wine and a vessel of water and a vessel of milk. See what I'm saying? That's in the Miraj. All that symbolism is the same no matter where you go, family. No matter where you go. Yes, sir. And so all of this is very powerful, family. Very powerful. And the more you study this, the more it helps you to know yourself. You see what I'm saying? Prophet told you don't throw away your Bible. That's right, brother. He said you're going to use it to condemn the European. And so we using it now to condemn them European ways that have us being gluttonous when it comes to how we eat, dealing with our passions and our desires, or getting caught up in the manifest, thinking with the little head, if you know what I mean. Oh, yeah. We got to be healed from that demonstration, family. I'm telling you, it's some powerful science, man. This is powerful, you know. So I'm going to show you something right here in our closing. We're going to go back to the prophet word because we always like to go back to what he said. And he said it here. I'm going to show you something even in the book of fire too. It says, and one day he was bringing forth the tools for work. And he said, these tools remind me of the ones we handled in the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. So now you really learn how to use your carpenter tools to build a temple of perfection. We use the square to measure all our lines and straighten out the crooked places of the way and make the corners of our conduct square. We use the compass to draw circles around our passions and desires to keep them in the bounds of righteousness. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, and ungainly parts and make the character symmetrical. Now, the scimitar descend through the family of the axe. You see? So we use that scimitar to cut away, those things that are ungainly within us. We use the hammer to drive home the truth and pound it in until it's a part of every part. That's repetition. The hammer repetition. We use the plane to smooth the rough, uneven surface of joint and block and board that go to build a temple for the truth. The chisel, the line, the plummet, the saw all have their uses in the workshop of the mind. And then this ladder with its trinity of state, faith, hope, and love, on it we climb up to the dome of purity and life. We showed you that this real ladder, it corresponds to the chemistry of man, the ministry of death, and the mystery of deific life. You see what I'm saying? It says on the 12-step ladder we ascend until we reach the pinnacle of that which life is spent to build, a temple of perfected man. That 12-step ladder, is actually going all the way up into the consciousness of one, above the neck. You got 12 cranial nerves in there. You see what I'm saying? Which correspond to the 12 signs of the heavens. You see? The dendron, the wheel of dendron. Even in this particular chapter right here, following the carpenter's tool, you'll see where it's speaking. It says, and Hillel told Ravana about the child and about the prophecy concerning him. It's talking about Yehoshua, about the wonders of the night when he was born, about the visit of the Magian priest. It says about the way in which he was protected from the wrath of evil men, about his flight into Egypt land, and how he then was serving with his father as a carpenter in Nazareth. Ravana was entranced and asked to know the way of the Nazarite, or Nazareth, to Nazareth, that he might go and honor such a one as the Son of Allah. And with his gorgeous train, he journeyed and came to Nazareth of Galilee, and he found the object of his search engaged in building the dwellings for the sons of men. It says, and when he first saw Yehoshua, he was climbing up a 12-step ladder, and he carried in his hands the compass, square, and the axe. Ravana said, all hail, most favored son of heaven. So, he was carrying the tools dealing with his conduct. He was carrying the tools of being able to cut away ungainly part, the tools of being able to draw circles around his passion and desires. See, our tools are tools that we use in the workshop of the mind, where thought is used to build character. We don't use our tools like in the Masonic legend, tools that become murder weapons. You see what I'm saying? Our tools are not murder weapons. These instruments we use have been well sterilized. We don't build a temple of a perfected man with bogus building material. You can't build it with bogus building materials. You see what I'm saying? So that's a powerful measure in and of itself if we can but comprehend that aspect. Okay, so let me go to this measure here so we can close this demonstration out. I'm trying to find my book of fire. And we're going to go into a grand drawing here. Our chairman, man, I'm telling you, he's a mastermind. Everybody that don't have this book, they definitely got to get hold to it, family. They got to get hold to it. And I think this thing here might have went right to the exact spot that I was looking for too. Wow. Well, it was meant for y'all to get this one here, because this is exactly where I was going, to the truth about the great serpent. Wow. There ain't no strange happening. So anyway, it says the truth about the great serpent. By divine design, created fate, the Elohim gave to Ish, the God man, a soul filled with action. Moorish Holy Quran, chapter 1. These actions, let me make sure I blow this up. Okay. These actions empowered the man which Allah has made to the infinite God status, free to think, reason, create, and govern from the might of his will. But the strength of the God man was centered in his east, above the eyebrows. See the third eye. See, we was talking about, that last night, right? You're talking about the pineal gland and all of that. It says third eye, his weakness, Maya of what seems to be, were spread among the 5 carnal senses below the eyebrows. And this is how the devil was created with man in the garden, to become a foe, Iblis, right? That he must fight and conquer. The lower self, made in the semblance of truth, appears to be full knowledgeable of man's true God self. But it must be remembered why Muslims say Allah, man's higher self, knows all, and what the angels, including Iblis, does not know. This means simply the serpent itself has no power over man, except the power man wills it to have. The part to be recognized here, it was the infinite thoughts of the Almighty Allah that made this serpent, devil, Iblis, lower self, etc., and placed it in the very garden, it said, which the God man must till to complete his victories. The snake is no accident. Allah does not make mistakes, and it is not outside of man, but in the garden of his cycle of life. Muslims call this serpent Iblis because it is man's Lord thinking for himself. The fallen angel, which the Bible says will always be marked by its crawling on its belly. See, that's that solar plexus region, right? The devil has its head or center east, is actually down or reverse or backward. Here the reader must be reminded that one serpent or devil is his or her own level of intelligence, which the wise man called human knowledge. No one has ever said snakes are stupid, and the lower self is no exception to this knowledgeable fact. This further explains why Iblis, the lower self, better known as the ego, is such a worthy foe. Hell, it's just as smart as you because it is you. The lower self is a shadow of your higher self. Question 95. The people of India call the serpent the ego, which slithers its way into man by his lower self, on the belly of desires. See? It says, although some people do not notice the serpent came with the garden party, it is a part of wisdom to know the nature of the snake, especially when it is made to be the shadow of each man's lower self. Question 95. The biblical allegory about a talking snake that also happens to be a great connoisseur of apples within itself should raise a mummy's brow. So to say the least, any reptile with scrotums enough to rap to Adam's old lady in his house after he has named him has got to be bad, ludicrous, or crazy. Or perhaps it knew Adam better than Adam knew himself. To get a better visual of the serpent as it relates to crawling on its belly is best described by Noble Drew Ali. Question: is the devil made in the image and likeness of Allah? Answer: no, he is a shadow of our lower self and will pass away. Notice here the word shadow is best related to a person's own shadow when it is cast opposite the light. Notice how all shadows need a true object from which to reflect and some tangible manifest upon which to appear. It will crawl along like the black chameleon upon any material in the wake of the true object's movements, yet without you and the light, the true object, there is nothing of it. For this reason, the snake is used allegorically to represent man's lower ego self placed in the character of his conscious guard. A brief study of any snake's movements over rocks, sands, trees, waters, virtually anything more solid than air, it will conform upon along its path. The nature of the snake, like a shadow, is reflective of the devil in every man made by Allah. Man's ego depends upon his eye being diverted from the light. It says his true God self, Allah. Only then will his carnal eyes see his shadow, or as the garden enjoyed what their five senses were offered more than what they were created to see inward. It says, actually, the serpent represents temptation and a part known by the original man, but what he chooses and will to ignore and not heed. The snake is the other part of man's conscious being. So much so until it was the serpent which Cain asked, am I my brother's keeper? Genesis 4, 8 and 1. This same serpent causes Abraham to lie about his wife Sarah to Pharaoh, Genesis 12, 10 through 20. And the Holy Christ Yeshua was not without his share of soul snakes also, but he recognized his serpent every time, e.g. by many times I am bound down to this carnal life, have I strength to overcome. Moorish Holy Quran, chapter 15, 3 through 4. Again, the three temptations were actually three strikes of the serpent at the ministry of Yehoshua. Moorish Holy Quran, chapter 15. The serpent is one's self, one's lower self. This is to say, Allah did not create any man without a garden with a serpent already in it. This includes prophets, masters, messiahs, messengers, and gurus, etc. If they were given a soul, then without a doubt it came with a serpent in it. This is another reason why the ancient Comedians wore the symbol of the serpent on their headdress, not just to display rulership of the upper and lower Nile, but also mastering the Ophidian lower self. Moorish Holy Quran, chapter 3 through 15. And it says Maya and the ego, two necessities to know self. Combine all the educational systems in the third world, the world, it says one would learn that only the knowledge of self leads to wisdom. Its purpose is to know man created by Allah as God, and that he and his creator are one. This is not a philosophy, religious belief, or occultism. Knowledge of the self is the purest form of thought, activity, and love of self. Love is the giver of sustainer of all life. This includes man, the knowledge of himself. To have knowledge of his state is man's first duty of himself. There are hundreds of thousands of ways to see the souls of men. It says, yet there's only one way to know his true self. The teaching of the ancient Comedian adepts and the very first holy instruction of Noble Drew Ali the same, Sutanothi, meaning man, know thyself. Yet this basic law of fallen humanity being humans remain the least taught of all educations and most mysterious to understand. The freedom to be like God is man's birthright and his divine heritage. The two inalienable gifts from the great God to man are knowledge of self and the wisdom to be the self. That man knows himself is truth. It says this wisdom of self is the demarcation line between perfected man and the God man. See, that's where your altar really is. Fallen humanity, right? It says in the entire world there are but two things. One is truth as perfect man, where there is no death, and the other is falsehood, the Maya called fallen humanity, where King Fear rules with the scepter of death. It says, according to Swami Muktananda, in 1908 and 1982, only about 5 out of every 100 people are realized beings, being themselves through the knowledge of self. My faith in these estimates would increase to 99.99% of the 60 million of fallen sons and daughters of ex-slaves here in the United States. This discrepancy is based upon the facts man must learn by the things he suffers. Chapter 1. To learn to love instead of hate. The most pronounced of all reason is obviously displayed by the persons themselves. Those who openly proclaim the identities Negro, Black, and colored African American are those who have no true knowledge of self. This ignorance is by design and shows the necessity to educate first those who are last. They must be taught and re-educated into the inherent wisdom which lies dormant within each of them. And so this knowledge that we demonstrate, family, is going to release, our people from those things that keep us bound down into the manifest. You see, the chairman even demonstrates, here as well. He said the wages of sin was the death of the sleep of the infinite God. I leave a man at the mercy of his carnal senses below the eyebrows. In the essence, according to the masters, most masters, messengers, and prophets, it says the woman obviously touched her body parts clitoris by error, discovered earthbound false sensations stimulating the senses, and felt pleasing and good for consumption. And so not only did she like it, but also Adam was right there with her, and he soon acknowledged he too had a serpent. So the chairman talk about these as special measures, dealing with the carnal nature, the same way that we deal with it in God, man, the word made flesh. We just have to be masters over the self, masters over our mind, and it's right here. You see what it say? The spine is the center of the man in the bodies of every living human being. It's talking about man's spinal cord. He goes into it too. So I just want to close out with that right there to show you, these real adept lessons right here, family. You know what I mean? Everybody got to get it. So that being said, family, we love you. Peace, love, and law at all costs. And that's going to bring this special session to a close. This one is shorter than the other ones. An hour and a few minutes. We working on it, family, but we getting the truth to the family. So praise be to Allah, Islamism without the schism. We love you. And we're going to keep bringing this truth to the manifest. We're going to give honor to your brother, Noble Brian, for always being here and supporting this measure. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe. This one here too, Brother Dre Theo. We give honors to you as well. And y'all keep getting this truth right here out to the people. Because ain't nobody else bringing it like this. Not from the Moorish perspective, they ain't. So we just say honors to your family, peace, love, and law at all costs. And we about to get us some shit out too, because we got to rise and shine and get some work done. So, Uncle Jet Sanev, life, health, and prosperity be upon you. And we leave you in love and peace. Gratitude. Peace and love.